So, let's just sit with this for a moment. Fear. It's one of the oldest things that exists inside a human being. Older than language, older than thought, almost. Just this quiet, constant presence that's been with us for as long as we've been alive. And tonight, or today, whenever you are listening to this, we are going to talk about it slowly, gently. The way you talk about something with a friend late at night, when everything is quiet and there's nowhere to be and nothing to rush toward. We are not going to make it dramatic. We are not going to make it heavy. We are just going to look at it, turn it over in our hands a little, try to understand it. Because here's the thing about fear. Most of us spend so much time feeling it, or avoiding it, or trying to push it away, that we never actually stop to understand what it is, where it comes from, why it works the way it does. And understanding something, really understanding it, has a way of making it feel smaller, more manageable, less like something happening to you, and more like something that's just a part of being human. So, that's what we are going to do. We are going to go through all of it slowly, chapter by chapter, and by the end, I think you'll know fear in a completely different way than you do right now. Get comfortable. There's no rush. Let's begin. What is fear? Not in a philosophical sense, not in a deep emotional sense, just mechanically. What is actually happening when you feel afraid? Fear is a response. That's the most basic way to put it. Something happens in the world around you, or even just in your thoughts, and your body reacts automatically without you deciding to, without you being in control of it all. Your heart beats faster, your breathing gets shallow and quick, your muscles tighten up, especially in your shoulders and your chest. Your senses sharpen, sounds seem louder, movement catches your eye more easily. Your whole body kind of leans forward, alert, ready, and your mind narrows. All those other thoughts you were having, what to eat for dinner, what that person meant when they said that thing, they just fall away. Your focus collapses down to one thing, whatever is making you afraid. All of that happens within a fraction of a second, before you have consciously registered that you are scared, before you have even had a chance to think. That skill is actually the whole thing. Fear isn't designed to be loud, it's designed to be fast. Your brain is not stopping to evaluate whether something is truly dangerous. It's just reacting. Because in a lot of situations, speed matters more than accuracy. We will come back to that idea a lot tonight. The idea that fear is optimized for speed, not for correctness. And a lot of the problems we have with fear in modern life comes directly from that. But for now, just hold on to this. Fear is a process, a biological, automatic process that your body runs when it thinks there's a threat. It's not a weakness. It's not a flaw. It's a system. A very old, very powerful system that was built for a world very different from the one most of us live in now. To understand why fear works the way it does, you have to go back, way back. Imagine living somewhere wild, not a city, not a house, somewhere open and exposed, where the things that could hurt you were real and physical and close. Animals that moved faster than you, terrain that could kill you if you weren't careful, weather that offered no mercy. In that world, the humans who survived were the ones who were fast to notice danger, the ones whose bodies responded immediately, without hesitation, the ones who didn't sit and think too long before reacting. A human who was calm and slow to react when a predator came near, didn't pass their genes on. A human who startled easily, who was always slightly on alert, who ran before they were completely sure they needed to. That human survived, had children, those children had children, and here we are. We are, in a very literal sense, the descendants of the most anxious and alert humans who ever lived. Think about that for a moment. Every single person alive today carries genes from people who were good at being afraid, who took threats seriously, who didn't take unnecessary chances. Fear wasn't a bug in the system, it was the feature. It was the thing that kept people alive long enough to have families and build communities and eventually, thousands of years later, sit quietly in the dark listening to someone talk softly about psychology. So, when fear shows up for you, even when it feels excessive, even when it feels out of place, it's worth remembering that it comes from a very real place, a very ancient place. It's your body doing exactly what it was built to do. The problem, of course, is that the world has changed a lot, and the fear system hasn't changed with it, not in any meaningful way. Your brain today looks almost identical to the brain of a human being who lived 20,000 years ago. Same hardware, completely different world. And that gap is where most of our problems with fear come from. Let's talk about the brain for a little while. Deep inside your brain, roughly toward the center, there is a small structure called the amygdala. It's about the size and shape of an almond. You actually have two of them, one on each side, and they are largely responsible for your emotional responses, especially fear. The amygdala works like a kind of alarm system. It constantly scanning your experience, what you're seeing, hearing, feeling, looking for signs of threat. And when it thinks it's found one, it sends out a signal. That signal triggers everything else, the heart racing, the muscles tensing, the whole cascade of the fear response. What makes the amygdala interesting is how fast it is and how blunt. It doesn't reason, it doesn't weigh evidence carefully, it pattern matches. It looks for things that resemble threats it's encountered before, and if it finds something close, it fires. There's a concept sometimes called the low road and the high road of fear. The high road is the longer path, the one that goes through your conscious thinking brain. That path takes time. It allows for nuance and judgment. It can say, okay, that's just a shadow on the wall, not an intruder. The low road is much faster. It goes directly from your senses to your amygdala, bypassing the thinking brain entirely. And it responds first. Before the thinking parts of your brain have even gotten the message, the amygdala has already sounded the alarm. So, by the time you consciously realize you are scared, your body is already responding. Your heart is already beating faster. The slow, thoughtful part of your brain is playing catch up. This is why you can't just tell yourself to stop being afraid. The fear response isn't coming from the thinking part of your brain. It's coming from somewhere older and faster. Logic arrives late to that party. The amygdala also stores emotional memories. If something frightened you once, the amygdala keeps a record of it, a kind of emotional filing system. And when something similar comes along in the future, it retrieves that memory and reacts accordingly, often before you are even consciously aware of what triggered you. This is why some fears feel completely irrational. Why you can know logically that a spider in the corner of the room isn't going to hurt you, and still feel your whole body tighten up when you see it. The amygdala doesn't care about your logic. It has its own files, its own memories, its own way of doing things. So, why does the brain so often overreact to things that aren't actually dangerous? There's a simple answer to this, and once you hear it, I think it will make a lot of sense. Imagine you're designing an alarm system and you have to make a choice. Do you make it very sensitive, meaning it goes off a lot, including for false alarms, or do you make it more specific, meaning it only goes off for real threats, but it might miss some? For a fire alarm in a building, you'd probably choose sensitive because the cost of a false alarm is going outside for a few minutes. Inconvenient. But the cost of missing a real fire is catastrophic. Your brain made for the same calculation. Over millions of years of evolution, it learned that false alarms are okay. Being scared of something that turns out not to be dangerous, that's fine. You were tense for a few minutes, no real harm done. But missing a real threat, that could mean death. So, the system is calibrated to heavily on the side of caution, to fire early and often, even when it's wrong. Because being wrong in the direction of too much fear is survivable. Being wrong in the direction of not enough fear sometimes isn't. Scientists sometimes call this the smoke detector's principle. A smoke detector that only went off when there was actual fire would be terrible smoke detector. You want it to go off when there's smoke, even if the smoke turns out to be from burnt toast. Your amygdala is a smoke detector. It's built to catch everything, and it doesn't particularly care about the difference between a fire and a burnt toast. And here's something else worth knowing. The brain treats imagined threats almost the same as real ones. If you think about something frightening vividly enough, your whole body responds almost as if it's actually happening. Your whole heart rate increases, your stress hormones rise, the whole system activates. This is why anxiety, which is really just fear of things that haven't happened yet, feels so physical, so real. Because to your nervous system, there isn't much difference between imagining a threat and experiencing one. It's not a weakness, it's just the way the system is built. And knowing that doesn't make the feelings go away, but it does make them a little less mysterious. Here's something I find kind of fascinating to think about. A human being living 30,000 years ago faced real, physical, immediate threats: animals, harsh weather, starvation, dangers that were right there in front of them, that required an immediate physical response. And the fear system was perfect for it. You see the threat, your whole body prepares to fight or run. You fight or run. The threat passes, your body returns to normal. Clean, simple, done. Now, think about the fears that most people carry around today. Fear of what people think of them, fear of losing their job, fear of making the wrong decision, fear of an email they haven't opened yet, fear of a conversation they need to have, fear of something that might happen next month or next year, or maybe never at all. None of these things require running. None of them require fighting. There's no physical action that resolves them. They just sit there, producing the same biological response: the heart rate, the tight chest, the narrowed focus, but with nowhere for that energy to go. And so the body holds it. The stress hormones stay elevated. The nervous system stays on alert. The muscles stay slightly tensed for hours, sometimes for days. This is one of the ways modern life and the ancient fear system don't really fit each other. Your body knows how to handle a predator. It doesn't really know what to do with a looming deadline or a difficult relationship or the constant low hum of uncertainty that most people live with. The threats are different now, but the body's response is largely the same. And that gap between the kind of fear we were built to handle and the kind of fear we actually live with is where a lot of chronic stress and anxiety comes from. None of which makes it your fault. Sorry. Or a sign that sometimes, sorry, or a sign that something is wrong with you. It's just biology, trying its best to navigate a world it wasn't quite designed for. Let's talk about social fear for a while. Because for a lot of people, this is the fear that's most present in daily life. The fear of being judged, of being rejected, of saying the wrong thing, or not knowing what to say, of taking up too much space or not enough, of being seen as strange or inadequate or just somehow too much. These fears are incredibly common, and they can be really deliberating in quiet, invisible ways that don't always look like fear from the outside. And here's the thing, they make complete evolutionary sense. For most of human history, being part of a group was survival. You needed other people. You needed to be accepted by them, trusted by them, valued by them. Because being cast out, being rejected by your group, that was genuinely life threatening. You couldn't survive alone in that world. So, the brain developed a very sensitive system for monitoring social acceptance, for tracking how other people see us, for noticing and reacting to any sign that we might be losing our place in the group. That system is still running in us today, full speed. Even though most of us are not in any danger of being cast out of our tribe for saying something awkward at a dinner party. The fear of public speaking is a classic example. Most surveys show it's one of the most common fear people have, sometimes listed above even the fear of death. And that sounds strange until you think about it through this lens. Standing in front of group of people, being watched, being evaluated, possibly being judged and found nothing or found wanting. That is exactly the kind of social threat the brain has been tracking for thousands of years. Of course, it responds strongly. The same logic applies to smaller things. The anxiety before sending a message and waiting for a reply. The self consciousness of walking into a room where everyone else is already sitting. The way a single critical comment can stay in your mind for days, while dozens of kind ones seem to fade almost immediately. The brain is paying extra attention to social threats. It always has been. That's not a personal feeling. It's just what the brain was trained to do. There's something almost interesting about the fact that humans can be afraid of things that don't exist. Not just things that haven't happened yet, but things that might never happen. Half formed shapes our minds create in the dark. Conversations we replay that went differently in our heads. Futures we construct out of our worst worries and then walk around inside as if they are real. Imagination is one of the most remarkable things about human. The ability to mentally simulate experiences, to think forward in time, to explore possibilities without actually having to live through them. It's the foundation of creativity, of planning, of empathy. But it's also the thing that makes fear so much more complicated for us than it is for other animals. A deer in a field can be afraid when a predator appears. But a deer doesn't lie awake at night worrying about predators that might show up tomorrow. It doesn't replay a frightening encounter from last week over and over in its mind. It doesn't imagine all the ways things could go wrong in the future. We do all of those things constantly. Our imagination allows us to project ourselves to forward and backward in time, to revisit past threats, to anticipate future ones, to create entirely fictional scenarios and feel genuine fear in response to them. And because the amygdala doesn't really distinguish between real experiences and vividly imagined ones, we can trigger a full fear response just by thinking, just by picturing something, just by letting our mind wander in a particular direction. This is one of the reasons anxiety can feel so exhausting. You're not just reacting to what's actually happening around you, you are reacting to a mental simulation of everything that could happen. And the mind can generate an almost infinite supply of those. There's a phrase that gets used sometimes, living in your head. And for people who deal with anxiety, that phrase captures something real. A significant portion of the fear they experience comes not from the world outside, but from the theater running continuously inside their own minds. Understanding this doesn't make the fear less real, but it does change how you might relate to it. Of all the things people are afraid of, uncertainty might be the most quietly powerful. Not knowing what's going to happen, not being able to predict or control outcomes, living with questions that don't have answers yet, maybe never will. Most people find this really uncomfortable, and there's a specific reason for that. The brain is, at its core, a prediction machine. It takes in information from the world, builds models of how things work, and uses those models to predict what's coming next. That ability to predict, to anticipate, is enormously useful. It helps you navigate the world efficiently. But when the brain can't predict something, it gets uncomfortable, nervous, almost. Because uncertainty means you can't prepare, you can't protect yourself, you can't plan. Sorry. And so the brain often responds to uncertainty the way it responds to danger, with alertness, with activation, with that low hum of unease that can be hard to name but very easy to feel. Some researchers have found that for certain people, uncertainty itself can be more distressing than a known bad outcome. In other words, some people would rather know that something bad is going to happen than not know whether it will, which is a remarkable thing to think about. The brain so dislikes not knowing that it can actually prefer a guaranteed negative outcome over an unknown one. Because, at least with a known bad outcome, you can start preparing. You can stop waiting. This explains a lot of behaviors that might seem strange at first. Why people check news constantly even when it makes them feel worse. Why we seek reassurance even when we know it won't really stick. Why the waiting before test results or before a difficult conversation can feel worse than whatever actually happens. The uncertainty itself is the thing the brain finds hardest to hold. And the only real way through it, which is easier said than done, but still worth saying, is learning to sit with not knowing, not fighting it, not filling the space with worst case scenarios, just letting it exist, this unknown space. without needing to resolve it right now. Fear of failure is one of those fears that hides in plain sight. A lot of people don't think of it as fear exactly. They think of it as being realistic or careful or having high standards. And sometimes it does produce those things. But underneath, very often, there's something that looks a lot like fear. The fear that if you try and don't succeed, something bad will happen. That you'll be judged. That you will confirm something you already worry is true about yourself. That the attempt itself will cost you something you can't get back. And so, the response is often to not try, or to try in ways that are small enough to feel safe, to hold back, to stay in the shallower end of things, where the risk of real failure feels more controlled. This is one of the most quietly limiting fears there is, because it doesn't feel like fear most of the time. It feels like being sensible. It dresses itself up in very reasonable sounding language. I'm just being practical. I don't want to set myself up for disappointment. I'll try, I'll try it when conditions are better, when I'm more prepared, when the timing is right, and the timing is rarely right. Because that's the point. The fear of failure keeps moving the goalpost, keeps finding new reasons why now isn't quite the moment. What's underneath this fear, when you look closely at it, is often something to do with identity. It's not just about failing at the thing. It's about what failing at that thing might mean about who you are. Whether it confirms some fear that you're not as capable as you want to be, which is a painful thing to carry and a very human thing to carry. Most people have some version of this. The quiet voice that says, maybe I'm not the actual good enough. And the protective impulse that says, well then, let's not find out. But fear of failure, like all fears, is trying to protect you. It just doesn't always know the difference between a genuine threat and a chance worth taking. Relationships are where a lot of our deepest fears live. Fear of being truly known and not being accepted. Fear of losing someone important. Fear of trusting someone and having that trust broken. Fear of needing someone and what that need makes you vulnerable to. These fears are so unique, and they shape so much of how people behave in their closest relationships, often in ways they don't fully recognize. There's a whole field of psychology called attachment theory that talks about this. The basic idea is that very early experiences we have of being cared for or not being cared for shape the patterns we carry into adult relationships. They teach us early on whether closeness is safe, whether other people can be counted, whether it's okay to need something from someone else. Those early lessons don't just disappear when we grow, they become templates and they quietly influence how we respond to closeness, distance, conflict, and connection for the rest of our lives. Some people, when they start to feel very close to someone, pull back. Not because they don't want closeness, but because closeness feels dangerous. Because at some level they learn that closeness comes before loss or disappointment. So the body tries to protect itself by keeping a certain distance. Other people become very anxious when they sense even small amounts of distance from someone they care about because they learn that distance might mean abandonment. So they try to close the gap, sometimes in ways that push people further away without meaning to. None of these patterns are character flaws. They are all fear responses. They are all the brain doing its best to protect a person sorry, based on what it learned a long time ago about how safe it is to love and be loved. Understanding this in yourself and in the people around you makes a lot of things softer. A lot of conflicts that feel personal begin to look a little different when you can see the fear underneath them. Let's talk about this one carefully. Fear of death is maybe the most fundamental fear there is. The one that sits quietly underneath many of the others. And it's something almost every person has some relationship with, even if they don't think about it very often. It makes complete sense that we would be afraid of death. The drive to survive, to keep living, is one of the most powerful forces in biology. It's written into the deepest parts of us. But the way humans relate to death is complicated in a way that's fairly unique. Because we know it's coming, not in an abstract way, in a personal, unavoidable way. We understand that we are going to die, that the people we love are going to die, and we have to figure out how to live with that knowledge. Some people manage this by not thinking about it much, which works, more or less. Life is busy enough that you can go long stretches without the thought really ending. It stays in the background, acknowledged but not examined. Others find that the thought comes more frequently, especially in quiet moments, lying in bed at night, sitting alone, when the usual distractions aren't available. And it brings with it a kind of strange vertigo, a sense of the ground shifting a little. There's research suggesting that awareness of mortality, even when it's unconscious, influences a surprising amount of human behavior. The things people build, the legacies they try to create, the beliefs they hold about what comes after. Many of these, psychologists have argued, are shaped in part by awareness that our time here is finite. Fear of death isn't something to solve, it is something to live alongside. And many people find that when they allow themselves to actually think about it, really think about it, carefully and honestly, it loses some of its grip. Not all of it, but some. There's something that can happen when you sit quietly with the fact of your own mortality without running from it. A kind of clarity sometimes, a sharpening of what actually matters. The noise that fills a usual day seems a little quieter. The things worth caring about seem a little obvious. Not always, and not easily, but sometimes. Here's something that might be comforting to think of as you get closer to sleep. Sleep is, among many other things, one of the most powerful emotional regulation tools your brain has. And one of the things it does very specifically during the night is process fear, literally soften it. During REM sleep, the stage of sleep where most dreaming happens, something interesting occurs. Your brain replays memories and emotional experiences, but in a different neurochemical environment than your waking life. The levels of stress related chemicals drop very low during REM, lower than during any other phase of your day. What this means is that your brain can revisit emotionally significant experiences, including frightening or distressing ones, but without the full emotional charge they carried when they first happened. It's like reviewing something difficult from a calmer distance, processing it, filing it away with a little less weight attached. This is a real reason why things that felt catastrophic at 11 at night often feel more manageable in the morning. It's not just the rest, it's the processing. Your brain has been working on it while you slept, quietly stripping away some of the raw intensity, putting things in context. This is also one of the reasons that sleep deprivation tends to amplify anxiety. When you don't sleep enough, you miss that overnight processing. The emotional weight of difficult things doesn't get softened, it accumulates. So, sleep is, in a very literal sense, a kind of overnight therapy. Your brain doing quiet maintenance, reorganizing your emotional world while you rest. And knowing something helpful is happening, is a good thing to hold in mind when you're lying in the dark with thoughts that feel heavy. Your brain is working on it. It's already on the case. You can let go a little. The nervous system has two main modes. There's the sympathetic nervous system, the one that activates during fear and stress, the one that speeds your heart up, tightens your muscles, sharpens your attention, the fight or flight system. That's the one fear turns on. And then there's the parasympathetic nervous system, sometimes called rest and digest. This is the system that brings things back down, that slows the heart rate, relaxes the muscles, eases the breathing, signals to the brain that the danger has passed and it's safe to settle. These two systems are always in a kind of balance, and there are things you can do gently to shift that balance toward the calmer side. The most accessible one, the one that always available, that requires nothing at all, is the breath. When you breathe in, your heart rate speeds up very slightly. When you breathe out, it slows down. This is a small effect, but it's consistent and real. And what it means is that making your exhale a little longer than your inhale has a gentle, genuine effect on your heart rate. on your nervous system. A slow, long exhale is a quiet massage to the nervous system, a signal that says we are okay. We can slow down now. There's also something called the vagus nerve, a long, wandering nerve that connects the brain to most of the major organs in the body. It's a key part of the parasympathetic system and it responds to things like slow breathing, warm, soft sound, the feeling of being somewhere safe. All of those things, warm, slow breath, gentle sound, a sense of safety, nudge the nervous system in the direction of calm. Not instantly, not like a switch, but gradually and consistently. Which means that if you are laying here now, breathing slowly, somewhere comfortable, listening to a quiet voice, your nervous system is probably already shifting, already moving in the direction of rest. Your whole, sorry, your body knows what to do. It's already doing. We have covered a lot of ground tonight. Fear as a biological system, ancient and fast, the amygdala, scanning the world before you have even had a chance to think. The way that body was built for a different kind of danger than most of us face today. The social fears, the fears of uncertainty and failure and loss. The deep, quiet fear that sits at the edge of all others. And I hope, if nothing else, that thinking about all of this has made fear feel a little less like something that's happening to you and a little more like something that's just a part of you. Something that came from somewhere, something that makes sense, even when it doesn't feel like it does. You are a creature built by millions of years of survival. Every person who came before you, all the way back, further than you can imagine, they all carried fear too. They felt in the dark, the same way you do. They worried about things they couldn't control. They felt that tightness in the chest, that quickening of the breath, and they kept going. Not because they stopped being afraid, but because they kept going anyway. Fear doesn't have to go away for you to rest. It doesn't have to go away for you to let your body be still. Your breathing slow, your muscles soften just a little. The alarm can be there. You don't have to fight it tonight. You don't have to fix it. You can just notice it gently and then let your attention settle somewhere quieter. The sound of your own breathing, the of your body wherever you're resting, the feeling of the air moving in and out, slow, easy, steady. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to be anywhere. You don't have to solve anything. Just rest. The night is quiet. Your body knows how to take it from here. Sleep well.